Hello, I am Ihor Havryshchak. Today is July 10th, Thursday. I'd like to bring you important news in this world. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. In the video description, there is a link to my YouTube channel, so please subscribe, like, comment, and write where you watch us from. Your comments and suggestions are welcome, as this is how we support Ukrainian language content and counter Russian propaganda. Today we will discuss several topics: the situation in the United States regarding Russia and pressure on the Kremlin, the visit of the Ukrainian president to Rome for a conference on the reconstruction of the country, and the position of Europe, which still cannot agree on sanctions packages against Russia. The United States has rejected Moscow's proposals and is ready to put pressure on the Kremlin with a united front led by Trump, albeit with nuances. In Rome, Volodymyr Zelensky met with Trump's special representative for Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, and Pope Leo XIII. We will talk about this in more detail. Kellogg and Zelensky discussed arms supplies from the United States, and it is already known that important ammunition for the defense forces is on its way to the front. The 18th package of sanctions is being blocked in Europe, and the new member does not support Russia, but rather demands tougher measures. And now to the topic of the audio conversation released by CNN. In it, Donald Trump allegedly stated that he had promised Putin to bomb Moscow in the event of an invasion of Ukraine. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov avoided answering directly to questions about the authenticity of the recording.
Речник Кремля Дмитрій Песков фактично уникнув відповіді на запитання про те, чи була розмова згадана в опублікованій телекомпанією CNN аудіозаписі, на якому, як стверджується, Дональд Трамп розповідає, що обіцяв російському президенту в телефонному режимі Путіну бомбити Москву, в разі якщо він вторгнеться в Україну.
CNN reports that Trump said this in a private meeting with a sponsor during the 2024 election campaign. The Kremlin commented on this with restraint. Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov said he could not confirm or deny the authenticity of the audio recording, emphasizing the large number of fakes. Regarding the content of the conversation, Peskov suggested that it could have taken place when Trump was not president of the United States, so there were no phone calls with Putin. Trump's words suggest that this refers to the period before 2021, when the president spoke regularly by phone. This shows how Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov and Putin himself avoided making clear comments on any statements from the United States, especially after Trump sharply criticized Russia for its unwillingness to compromise in the war against Ukraine.
Зі Сполучених Штатів Америки після того, як Трамп серйозно накинувся на Росію і її небажання зовсім йти на компроміси у війні з Україною.
The Kremlin commented on the situation rather cautiously. The most important thing is that President Volodymyr Zelensky met with Donald Trump's special representative Keith Kellogg in Rome yesterday. They discussed arms supplies and strengthening the air defense system, as the head of state reported on Telegram. Zelensky emphasized that air defense is one of the key priorities amid intensified Russian attacks. During the meeting, they discussed the purchase of American weapons, joint production and localization of defense products in Ukraine. Particular attention was paid to sanctions pressure, in particular the need for stricter restrictions on the Russian energy sector and the introduction of secondary sanctions against buyers of Russian oil. We look forward to the advancement of the bill by Senators Graham and Blumenthal in the U.S. Congress, which may force Russia to think more seriously about peace. The president of Ukraine thanked Kellogg for participating in the conference on the restoration of the country, as well as Donald Trump, both parties, and the entire American people for their support.
Обом партіям і всьому американському народові за допомогу та підтримку.
This is a traditional phrase of Volodymyr Zelensky. There was a time when Trump and his team repeatedly stated that the president of Ukraine rarely expressed gratitude. Since then, Zelensky has started or ended every communication with the United States with words of gratitude to everyone who expects to hear them. Trump's special envoy Keith Kellogg said that Ukraine needs an analog of the Marshall Plan to rebuild. He noted that he remembers the history of the U.S. Marshall Plan from his student days and is convinced that Ukraine needs the same approach. It will not be easy, but according to him, the United States is ready for it. Kellogg emphasized the importance of the conference on Ukraine's recovery in Rome. He recalled that the Marshall Plan was aimed at rebuilding countries after World War II and believes that Ukraine needs similar support. According to him, there will definitely be funds for reconstruction, as many countries have already expressed their willingness to help. The main question is how to get Putin to stop the war. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky met with the new Pope Leo XV in the Vatican. They discussed the readiness of Ukraine and the Vatican to hold the next meeting between the delegations of Russia and Ukraine, which the Kremlin currently rejects. This idea was already mentioned on the eve of the second meeting in Istanbul. Lavrov said that Orthodox Christians would be uncomfortable in the epicenter of Greek Catholics. At the same time, everyone knows that he is comfortable in Turkey, where the Muslim population predominates. We have already talked about this. Donald Trump mentioned the issue of weapons and declared his readiness to consider it. The U.S. president confirmed that Ukraine had requested another Patriot air defense missile system. The U.S. president said that the White House would consider Ukraine's request for the Patriot system. Although he emphasized that it is very expensive, Ukraine is ready to buy weapons from the United States. The only question is permission. The president added that he is dissatisfied with the situation in Ukraine, as he has repeatedly stated at the official level. Trump mentioned the massive attack on the night of July 8 and 9, emphasizing its importance. This shows that he is following the events in Ukraine more closely and commenting on the shelling, to which he had not previously responded. According to him, Russia launched more than 700 drones last night. This must be stopped. The U.S. president said he did not know who made the decision to pause military aid to Ukraine, as only he could make such a decision. Trump denied that he had given the order, emphasizing, "I would know if a decision was made. I would have known. I would probably give the order, but I haven't done it yet." In fact, Trump is well informed, as CNN conducted an investigation and found that Pentagon Chief Pete Huckabee single-handedly stopped military aid to Ukraine without informing the White House. This aid remained in warehouses in Poland. The reason was poor communication and a lack of advisors who could explain the need for action at the administration level, CNN notes. There is a lack of competence to understand that such important issues cannot be handled alone, as they are of fundamental importance. Pete Huckabee has political advisors around him, including Albright Colby, who reportedly instructed Deputy Steve Feinberg to send an order to Huckabee to stop some of the aid. CNN is a Democratic TV channel that usually supports Republican opponents. Therefore, if the channel claims that Trump was not involved in the cutoff of aid to Ukraine, it is credible. Given the political competition, where the parties seek to weaken each other as much as possible, CNN would have no reason to favor Trump, which is why their conclusion seems credible. The Associated Press and Reuters report that the Trump administration has already resumed arms shipments to Ukraine. These are 155 mm caliber Western artillery systems, including Archer, French Caesar, Panzer 2000, and Polish Krab. Ukraine currently has one of the largest arsenals of such systems in the world.
Від арчерів до цезарів французьких, Panzer 2000, краби, тобто дуже багато у нас такої, в нас взагалі, напевно, найбільша артилерія з усього світу зараз знаходиться.
The most important thing is that the supply of GMLRS precision-guided missiles for our HIMARS has been resumed, as confirmed by the Associated Press and Reuters, which can be fully trusted. As for Pete Hegseth's decision, it was made alone, and this is what raises questions. European officials report that during the NATO summit in June in the Netherlands, Trump openly showed irritation at Putin's unwillingness to make concessions, calling his position nonsense. This caused surprise among European representatives, who are convinced that it was not Trump who stopped military aid. The pause in deliveries has been forgotten. The aid has been resumed. 155mm caliber, GMLRS and HIMARS are arriving, and the situation is stabilizing. Economist analysts have published a graphic showing the amount of aid to Ukraine under the USAID program, funds allocated by the US Congress on Biden's initiative. They are contracted with American military-industrial enterprises that manufacture weapons to order for Ukraine, not through the presidential program from warehouses.
Сполучених Штатів Америки, і вони на замовлення України виготовляють це озброєння не по президентській програмі зі складів.
USAID assistance to Ukraine is scheduled until 2028, according to the schedule published by The Economist. The volumes are not sufficient for a quick victory, but the supply is stable. Meanwhile, the US is developing new mechanisms to put pressure on Russia. On July 9th, the Wall Street Journal reported that the Congress may vote on the relevant decisions, as mentioned in the previous conversation.
Вчора, 9 липня, в попередній з вами розмові я казав, що будуть говорити і повідомляли навіть Wall Street Journal, що можуть голосувати.
The bill on sanctions against Russia has not been put to a vote in the Senate, but the leading Republican leaders of the U.S. Congress, House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune, have expressed their readiness to push for new restrictions. Their statements followed President Donald Trump's words about his intention to put pressure on Moscow to end the war in Ukraine.
Після того, як президент США Дональд Трамп заявив, що готовий чинити тиск на Москву, щоб припинити війну в Україні.
Vladimir Putin has shown an unwillingness to have a serious conversation about peace mediation. We must send him a clear message, said House Speaker Mike Johnson. In turn, Senate Republican leader John Thune reported significant progress in working on the bill together with the White House.
Лідер республіканців в Верхній палаті в Сенаті сказав, що є суттєвий прогрес у співпраці з Білим домом над законопроектом.
The bill, according to Thune, will strengthen President Trump's negotiating position and help end the bloodshed in Ukraine. He told the Senate that he expects the document to be ready for consideration in the coming weeks, before the summer recess. The Senate ends its work on August 1st, while the House of Representatives plans to go on vacation a week earlier, around mid-July.
Перерву у серпні. Тут варто зазначити наступне, що 1 серпня закінчується робота сенаторів, а Нижня палата представників йде у відпустку на тиждень раніше, тобто десь в 20-х числах липня.
They plan to vote by July 20th. A bill is already backed by 85 of 100 senators. In the House, a similar document has support from Speaker Mike Johnson, though he admitted he hadn't read it. Senator John Thune said the White House and Donald Trump signaled readiness to start the process.
Тун каже, що отримав сигнали від Білого дому, від Трампа, і можна його запускати в дію.
The problem is that, according to Politico, Trump has agreed to give Congress permission to vote on the bill, but wants to retain the right to control the imposition or lifting of sanctions. At the same time, the draft law by Senators Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal has not yet been made public. The bill was introduced to the Senate on April 1st, symbolically, because since then, there has been a lot of talk, but no concrete action. Now we are hearing clearer statements. The White House is putting pressure on Congress, and Congress has agreed, including Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. He insists that control over the imposition of sanctions under this law remains in Trump's hands.
контроль і введення санкцій за цим законопроектом залишалося за Трампом.
The draft law provides for sanctions in the form of 500% duties for countries that buy energy from Russia, oil, gas, uranium, and other products. In the original version, these sanctions were to be imposed automatically. According to the new version, President Trump will have the right to postpone them for up to 180 days for individual countries at his discretion. The White House and congressmen are ready to work together to take measures that open a window of opportunity for Putin to rethink the feasibility of compromise. However, it is clear that he has no intention of making concessions or taking steps toward de-escalation. The New York Times reports that the Kremlin is ignoring Trump's calls for an end to the war in Ukraine. According to two sources, Putin believes in the ability of the Russian army to break through the Ukrainian front and finally break the resistance. He is convinced that Russia's advantage on the battlefield is growing and that Ukraine's defense may weaken in the coming months. Putin believes that a cessation of hostilities is impossible without significant concessions from Ukraine. Among his demands are the destruction of Western weapons, Ukraine's withdrawal from the 4 occupied regions, included by Russia in its constitution, and the rejection of reparations and lawsuits. The New York Times also mentions Peskov's statement that Trump was allegedly ready to strike at Moscow, but the Kremlin does not attach importance to this. The Russian Federation continues to use tough rhetoric, and Medvedev's statements confirm that Putin is not responding to Trump's words. This explains why Trump has become tougher in his public statements. There is no action yet. The changes are only in rhetoric. There is an expectation that it will lead to concrete steps, but we should remain restrained and wait for real action. The bill is expected to be voted on in Congress at the end of the month. As for Europe, it wants to unite, but democracy and complex bureaucracy slow down the decision-making process. The need to take into account even the positions of opponents of democracy and support for Ukraine creates additional difficulties. This system is constantly stalling. Polish President Andrzej Duda, whose term ends on August 6, recently visited Ukraine. The meeting was positive, but upon his return, Duda said that Ukrainians and European allies underestimate Poland's role in supporting Ukraine. He expressed indignation and threatened the possible closure of the airport in Rzeszów, a key logistical hub for Western aid. The Polish president, whose term will end in August, emphasized the importance of the infrastructure in the eastern part of the country, in particular the airport in Rzeszów, a key hub for delivering Western aid to Ukraine. According to him, Ukraine and its Western allies underestimate Poland's role and treat its logistics resources as property.
На думку Дуди, і українські західні союзники ставляться до польських логістичних ресурсів як до своєї власності.
Polish President Andrzej Duda said that Ukrainians and allies behave as if the Rzeszów airport and Polish highways are their property. He emphasized that these facilities belong to Poland and threatened to restrict access. If someone doesn't like it, we will close it, deliver it any way you want, by sea, by air, by parachute, if you think you don't need us. The Polish president emphasized that the country has the right to expect proper treatment as a key transit country for military aid to Ukraine. It is not about negotiations with Ukraine, but about the need to discuss with allies Germany and the United States. He noted that relations between Poland and Germany remain tense. It seems that we should thank not only the American people, the White House, and Trump, but also Andrzej Duda for his logistical support. Everyone around us is voicing demands, and it seems as if the war is not in Ukraine, but Poland is fighting Russia. In this rhetoric, Ukraine is not seen as the main defender, but as a country whose role is being devalued despite its contribution to the defense of Europe, especially the western flank. Everyone wants gratitude and recognition, even though it is Ukraine that pays with blood for the security of Europe. Polish aviation is having a hard time. Every day they report on another night flight because of attacks by Shahed drones. But this cannot be compared to Ukrainian pilots who risk their lives and die every day performing heroic tasks on the front line.
Росіяни по Україні шахедами, в Польщі найважче це переживають. Бідні пілоти не сплять ночей, літають. Це скажіть нашим пілотам, які регулярно наші герої гинуть, виконуючи просто феноменальні речі на лінії бойового зіткнення.
The European Union failed to adopt the 18th package of sanctions against Russia due to Slovakia's veto. This decision was blocked on July 9th, although the saga has been going on since the end of June. The next attempt to vote is scheduled for July 11th. According to 3 senior EU diplomats, Slovakia continues to block the introduction of a new sanctions package. The 18th package of sanctions against Russia will be discussed at a meeting of EU ambassadors on July 11th. An agreement has not yet been reached, as Slovakia continues to block the decision, despite the positive results of talks with the European Commission in Bratislava on July 3rd. Slovakia is blocking the adoption of the 18th package of sanctions against Russia, as it provides for a complete ban on contracts for the supply of Russian gas, both liquefied and pipeline. Prime Minister Robert Fico is demanding guarantees on gas supply sources after January 1st, 2028.
Словаччина Фіцо вимагають гарантії після 28 року, після 1 січня 28 року, де їм брати той газ.
Most countries were looking for alternatives to Russian gas, while Slovakia, under Fico's leadership, remained dependent and is awaiting decisions from the European Union. At the same time, the blocking of the 18th package of sanctions may be double. In addition to Slovakia, Estonia has expressed its dissatisfaction and threatened to veto the document. Estonia opposes the 18th package of sanctions, considering it weakened. According to media reports, Foreign Minister Margus Takna insists that measures against Russian oil remain in the text of the document. He emphasizes that lowering the price ceiling on Russian oil should be included in the sanctions package.
Ми абсолютно чітко дотримуємося думки, що зниження стелі цін на нафту має бути включене до цього пакету.
Ukraine has a tough stance on limiting the cost of Russian oil. As part of the 18th package of sanctions, it is proposed to reduce the price ceiling from $60 to $45 per barrel. President Zelensky and Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiga have previously stated that the ideal price cap would be $30. The proposal to lower the Russian oil price cap to $45 failed due to lack of consensus, despite its potential impact on Russia's budget. At the G7 summit, the US opposed the move, complicating agreement on the 18th sanctions package. Estonia's foreign minister noted the $60 cap has remained unchanged for 2 years. When the decision was made 2 years ago, the G7 countries said they would review the price ceiling for Russian oil on a weekly basis. Dozens of weeks have passed since then, but no revision has taken place. Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Takna noted that now there are signs that the G7 is ready to reduce the price even further. In recent days, the United States has also signaled its intention to increase pressure on Russia through new sanctions. Estonia mentioned the draft law, which is of particular concern due to its location on the border with Russia. Many experts and Western countries, including Germany, believe that in the event of an aggression against NATO, Estonia could be the first target. That is why it insists on the adoption of the most severe sanctions against Russia. German Chancellor Merz, who differs significantly in rhetoric from Olaf Scholz, made a statement in the Bundestag that diplomatic avenues to end the war in Ukraine have been exhausted. He emphasized the need to make important decisions based on a sober assessment of the current threats. Quote, "We will help Ukraine, ladies and gentlemen, even despite the resistance of the left and the pro-Russian right in the chamber." The German chancellor stated that support for Ukraine will continue. In his opinion, diplomatic means are exhausted when a criminal regime resorts to force, questioning the right to exist of an entire state and trying to destroy political freedom across the European continent. He also mentioned Russia's latest massive attack and said that a change of political course is beginning in Germany. The federal government has again become visible on the international stage, and the world has begun to take it seriously. It is necessary to develop good relations with European neighbors, in particular France, and to extend cooperation to non-EU NATO states among small and medium-sized countries. Merz noted that he sees no point in communicating with Putin by phone.
Нагадаю вам слова Мерца, що він сказав, що він не бачить змісту говорити в телефонному режимі.
French President Emmanuel Macron said that every conversation with Putin only provokes new attacks on Ukraine. After his last contact, Russia launched a record 740 Shahed drones. France strongly condemned the Kremlin's demands for the demilitarization of Ukraine, emphasizing that this is a red line that Paris is not ready to cross.
Демілітаризація України, яку вимагає Росія, є абсолютно червоною лінією для Франції.
French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu said that Ukraine has the right to security, and this is a key factor for the stability of neighboring countries. He noted that the demilitarization of Ukraine, demanded by Russia, is unacceptable. President Emmanuel Macron clearly conveyed this position to Putin during their recent conversation, in which, according to Lecornu, the Russian leader tried to convince his interlocutor through historical arguments. France considers the requirement of demilitarization a red line not only for Ukraine, but also for neighboring countries. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen praised the efficiency and speed of Ukraine's military-industrial sector, but noted that its capacity is currently only 60% utilized. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen noted that Ukrainian production demonstrates impressive speed, cost-effectiveness, and technological savvy, although the country's military-industrial complex is only 60% utilized. EU member states can now receive loans through the Safe Security Action for Europe program to purchase products directly from the Ukrainian defense industry, which guarantees high quality, efficiency, and affordable prices. For Ukraine, this means critical revenue and strengthening the defense industry. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen also emphasized Russia's rapid rearmament. The SAVE program, adopted in late May by the EU countries, allows member states to directly purchase products from the Ukrainian defense industry. The $150 billion fund allows EU countries to take out loans to finance defense both within their countries and to support Ukraine. Ukraine can participate in arms procurement, not only within the EU. This is an important initiative, which is reinforced by the creation of a new $100 billion fund. According to Bloomberg, its goal is to support Ukraine until 2027. Europe is capable of finding the necessary funds. The White House's rhetoric has changed significantly. Although it is currently just words, they differ radically from previous positions. There is hope that they will be followed by concrete actions. Arms supplies to Ukraine have resumed, and Donald Trump has said he will consider selling Patriot systems. This is critically important for the Ukrainian defense forces, especially the air defense units, which are facing terrorist attacks from Russia on a daily basis. These were the key events as of the morning of July 10th, Thursday. If you can, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share this information. Please tell us what region you are watching from. Your comments and suggestions are really important. Feedback helps us better understand your moods. And of course, subscribe to the 24th YouTube channel. The link is in the description below the video.